For my 2021 build, I wanted to go with something with a little more power. I know that ASUS and all of the other graphics cards manufacturers have basically said for the 30 series that you're perfectly okay putting in a 750 watt power supply. For the 3090s, 850 watt is kind of more recommended, but I wanted to go with something that'll give me some overhead when it comes to overclocking. So I'm going today with the Corsair HX1200i power supply. Now, I could have gone with an AX versus an HX. The biggest difference is the AX is digital and has a lot more control and functions if you want to really tweak the settings within your power supply, versus the HX1200i, which is an analog power supply and doesn't really give you any control over the specific settings within the power supply itself. Now, there are still things you can do, so it still works with Corsair IQ. You can still do power monitoring and fan control. The other thing that this power supply has is this is actually a multi-rail power supply by default. And some of the higher end power supplies, you have a switch to switch between single rail and multi-rail. This requires you to install Corsair IQ. So you have to turn on your computer, get into Windows, install Corsair IQ, and then modify the setting from multi-rail to single rail if you're going to be supporting something like a 3090 graphics card. So a lot of people are having difficulty powering up the first time or powering the 3090s on the multi-rail setups. Everything from not being able to power up at all to being able to power up, get into games, and then have crashes or shutdowns. We'll have to power this up and change the setting to single rail before being able to fully support the 3090. I wanted to take a quick peek at what comes in the box. This is not a cheap power supply by any means. It is a little more affordable than the AX series power supplies. That being said, it is very hard to get. This power supply was on back order for about 3 months and finally did come in. Corsair actually has a large back order on most of their power supplies, especially their higher end ones. Although I have seen some of the HX1200i's and some of the HX series power supplies in stock in retail stores throughout the city. So we can at least be assured that there are some flowing and getting to consumers. All right, so let's see what comes in the box. One of the interesting things I'm looking forward to is the power cables are kind of designed to be flat. So I'm hoping that cable management's a little bit easier with this power supply than some of them. I know some of the power supplies, you have the ATX power cable, which is really bulky at the end, and it really won't bend. It doesn't look very good inside your case. It's really hard to route, especially when you have these larger power supplies that take up a lot of real estate inside the case to begin with. There we go. All the packaging that's going to end up going to recycling when I'm done. Okay. Cut this little sticker. And there we go. All right, so pamphlets, don't need those right now. The power supply itself is a little bit larger than a standard power supply. So standard power supply is probably about that big. This one's a little bit larger. And I'm going to leave that in the plastic for now. And comes with a lot of zip ties, little powered by Corsair sticky. So that's kind of cool. And then it comes with your Corsair carrying case for our extra power cables, which is kind of nice. And you've got every power cable imaginable. So these power cables are actually kind of cool. They're designed to be kind of flat. They're not sleeved, so there is no sleeving. If you did want to sleeve these, then, well, you wouldn't really be able to, because these are all, they're not individually separated. They're actually kind of like a little ribbon cable. So you've got pretty much every power cable imaginable, USB cable to plug in for Corsair IQ. I've got a little Molex to floppy drive adapter. So if you've got any floppy drives kicking around, that'll be useful. No, we do not use floppy drives anymore. So you've got a lot of cables, and this should come with a good number of PCI Express cables. So I got one here. Let's see, that's for the CPU. There's a second one for the CPU, we'll need that. And then What do we got here? PCIe, so we got 2 PCIe cables. I anticipate there is a third. There it is right there. So there are 3 PCIe Express cables. Each one has kind of the daisy chainable link to it, but for the 3090, we're going to be using all 3 of these individually. So the cool thing is there's actually a 4th PCI cable, just in case you wanted to do, dual SLI. 2 cables paired with a 3090 and another 2 paired with a 3090 should technically work. This power supply can pretty much run everything off of the rail. If you have a single rail mold, it'll run all 1200 watts at 12 volts available on the 12 volt rail. The 24 pin motherboard cable is very long. That is it looks like it's probably like 3 feet long. Let's open that up and take a look. One of the things I kind of wish that I could do more of is custom length cables. And technically it would be easy enough to re-terminate these and shorten them up. Just because that's a long cable, right? I mean, it's going to plug into your power supply and then it's going to come around and plug into your motherboard. That's a lot. That's a lot of cable. What I'm curious about is whether or not the manual actually talks about single rail versus multi-rail mode. So I'm going to take a quick peek and find out. So for the record, there is nothing in the manual whatsoever talking about switching between multi-rail and single rail modes. So they kind of leave that up to you to figure out. Luckily, we already know that we need to do that because we did our research ahead of time. In a few weeks' time, we'll find out how the Corsair HX1200i performs powering a 5950X as well as a 3090 RTX with a heavy overclock on my new water-cooled system that we're slowly putting together as we go.